The Mikoyan-Gurevich MiG-25 Foxbat stands as one of the most extreme achievements of Soviet aerospace engineering and Cold War competition, a supersonic interceptor and reconnaissance aircraft conceived in the late 1950s and early 1960s to meet the unprecedented challenges posed by American high-speed, high-altitude aircraft such as the planned North American B-70 Valkyrie bomber and the operational Lockheed A-12 and later State Route 71 reconnaissance aircraft, and it represented a direct response to fears that the Soviet Union could not protect its vast airspace from incursions by platforms capable of cruising above Mach 3 at altitudes beyond the reach of contemporary fighters and surface-to-air missiles. The design bureau of Artem Mikoyan and Mikhail Gurevich, which had already established a legacy with the MiG-15, MiG-17, MiG-19, and MiG-21, undertook the challenge of creating a machine that would not only fly higher and faster than any Soviet aircraft before it but could do so while carrying heavy radar systems and long-range air-to-air missiles, and the result was an aircraft of massive proportions and radical design choices, with twin vertical stabilizers, box-like air intakes, and an enormous wingspan relative to its fuselage length, all optimized not for agility but for raw speed, climb performance, and altitude ceiling, with airframe construction dominated by welded nickel steel alloy comprising about 80% of the structure, because while titanium would have been lighter and more heat-resistant, it was scarce and extremely difficult to manufacture in large quantities in the USSR of the 1960s, so steel was selected as a practical if heavy alternative, supplemented by about 11% aluminum and 9% titanium, and though this made the MiG-25 heavy and relatively unmaneuverable, it allowed it to endure skin temperatures exceeding 300 degrees Celsius generated at sustained supersonic speeds, powered by two massive Tumansky R-15B300 turbojet engines, each producing 22,500 pounds of thrust with afterburner. The Foxbat was able to achieve maximum speeds officially rated at Mach 2.83, around 3,000 km per hour, for continuous operations, but in emergency or test flights capable of exceeding Mach 3.2, 3,500 plus km per hour, though such extremes risked destroying the engines, as turbine blades were known to fail or melt at prolonged maximum thrust, meaning that pilots were instructed not to exceed the Mach 2.8-2.9 range during operational sorties. The aircraft service ceiling was an extraordinary 80,000 feet, 24,000 meters, with record-setting flights reaching over 123,000 feet, 37,650 meters, in zoom climbs, although such altitudes were not sustainable for extended flight, and it was capable of climbing at rates exceeding 60,000 feet per minute, making it ideal for quickly intercepting high-altitude intruders. The Foxbat was primarily produced in two major categories: the interceptor version, MiG-25P, and its upgraded derivatives such as the MiG-25PD with improved radar and engines, and the reconnaissance bomber version, MiG-25R, and its variants, which carried high-resolution cameras, side-looking radar, electronic intelligence gear, or bombing equipment for high-speed strike missions, and in both roles it carried formidable weapons, notably the R-40 AA 6 inches Acrid, long-range air-to-air missiles, among the largest and heaviest air-to-air weapons ever deployed, designed to engage enemy aircraft from long distances in head-on intercept scenarios. While extraordinarily fast, the MiG-25 had serious limitations. It was not agile, had relatively poor maneuverability, its avionics were bulky and initially primitive compared to Western counterparts, and it was unsuited to close dogfighting, being designed almost exclusively as a high-speed point defense interceptor or reconnaissance platform. Despite this, it set 29 world records, including speed, time to climb, and altitude records during the 1960s and 1970s, some of which still stand, and it gained worldwide notoriety in September 1976 when Soviet pilot Viktor Belenko defected to Japan in his MiG-25P, landing at Hakodate Airport, an event that shocked the West and allowed US and Japanese experts to examine the aircraft firsthand, discovering its rugged steel construction, enormous engines, and advanced but surprisingly vacuum tube-based avionics, which actually proved beneficial in resisting electromagnetic pulses. And while Western analysts had overestimated its potential as a dogfighter, they were impressed by its raw performance. Over its production run, more than 1,186 MiG-25s were built, serving not only with the Soviet Union but also exported to allies including India, Algeria, Syria, Libya, and Iraq, where they saw combat in conflicts such as the Arab-Israeli Wars, the Iran-Iraq War, and Operation Desert Storm. Most famously, an Iraqi MiG-25 in 1991 managed to shoot down a U.S. Navy F/A-18 Hornet, the only American aircraft confirmed lost to air-to-air combat during that war, while others engaged in high-speed dashes to evade coalition fighters. often outrunning pursuing F-15s thanks to their superior top speed, though by the 1990s Western technology and tactics had surpassed it. In reconnaissance roles, the MiG-25 was particularly valued for its ability to overfly hostile territory at speeds and altitudes that made interception nearly impossible, conducting surveillance over Israel, Iran, Pakistan, and China with relative impunity, and Indian Air Force MiG-25 Rupees conducted several secret reconnaissance flights deep into Pakistani airspace during the 1990s at altitudes that rendered them untouchable by Pakistani F-16s, earning the aircraft a reputation as a near-invulnerable spy plane. Eventually, however, the MiG-25 was superseded by its more advanced successor, the MiG-31 Foxhound, which retained much of its speed and altitude capability but added modern avionics, better radar, multi-role abilities, and more maneuverability, and by the 2000s most MiG-25s were retired from active service, though some continued to serve in reconnaissance and research roles. Despite its limitations, the Foxbat's legacy endures as one of the most extreme examples of Cold War military aviation, a machine built not for elegance or versatility but for sheer performance, whose existence forced NATO to rethink air defense strategies, influenced the development of Western aircraft, and remains an aviation icon, remembered both for its strengths, unparalleled speed, altitude, and intimidation factor, and its weaknesses, lack of agility and heavy dependence on brute force, ultimately standing as a symbol of how the Soviet Union pursued quantity and extreme performance to counterbalance Western technological sophistication in the high-stakes race for aerial supremacy.